Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we are continuing with our 3 Bolens Ride-a-matic project, and today specifically we are continuing with the engine transplant on the orange 1962, and we'll see how far we get with it. In the last video on this project, we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger where this piece of cowling wouldn't actually work with this pulley. Now the issue was that the hole in this bit of cowling, which is the original cowling for the K181 that we're switching into this tractor, had a smaller hole than the hole in the cowling that would have been on the factory K161, meaning that the pulley can actually go in through there to bolt onto the flywheel, and also it had a lip on it sticking up, so the spacing would have been off as well. So to combat that, we ended up bolting it into the mill on our rotary table, and that took quite a while to set that up, so we didn't do any footage of kind of setting it up or anything like that. However, we did get a few clips of us doing the actual machining, so here are those clips. Having done that machining, we bolted the cowling on to the front of the engine here, then put the pulley on to see how it fits. There was plenty of clearance between the pulley and the cowling, so we were happy with that. The pulley is quite tight on the flywheel, but that's how it's designed to be, so we don't think that's much of an issue, but that's why we haven't taken the pulley off again to kind of show you the clearance, is because of how difficult that was to get on. We will have to take the bolts off at some point to put this kind of grill piece back on there, but that's fine, because when you take the bolts off you'd have to actually lever the pulley off of the flywheel. It's that tight on there, so that's not a problem. We'll do that at some point. Now, having established that that was all good, we then put on the rest of the cowling for the engine. Most of it are the bits from this K181 originally. The only bits that came off of the original engine for this tractor is this top part. Reason for that is it is different to the top part that comes off a K181, and we needed it to be like this because it has the hole for the stud in this corner, which is used to hold the grill on the front. Speaking of the grill, in the last video we did mention about how this bottom part was quite badly bent, so we've been straightening that off video as well. So that's all good now. And we got a new ultrasonic cleaner. You may remember from that video we said it broke halfway through trying to clean the carburetor. Well, that's fully cleaned now, so that is back on, and so is the air filter and air filter cover, which you may notice is very close to this bracket here, which has the regulator, the fuel tank, all of that stuff on. Now, the original engine, a K161, has a thinner air filter. If I put this next to the air filter cover on this K181, you can see the difference. So it wouldn't usually be that close, which obviously means that with this engine it's more difficult to put on an air filter, but we did actually have to take it off because we put a new one on with a pre-filter. You can kind of see turquoise pre-filter there. So we did manage to get the old one off and a new air filter on and put the air filter cover back on. Not a clue how we managed that, but it's not coming off again, so that's all good. Something else that we've done off camera is we took the choke cable off because it was seized, and daily, or kind of every few minutes when we've been near it, we've put releasing agent on it, and it's still pretty seized. So not fully sure what we're going to do about this yet. That's kind of as far as we've got so far in preparation for this video. Now, before we get started today, we need to return some property to their rightful owners, because when we were doing the work on this red 62, we did nick a couple of bits from the other two Rideamatics in this project to kind of get it running. And now is the time to put those bits back. So we stole the belt guard off of this tractor and put it on there. We now have this one, which we bought from America. Thank you, Barry. So this can go onto the red 62, and then we can get the original one from this tractor back onto it. So that is just kind of original and authentic. And now all three of these tractors will have one of these, so that's complete. Another thing that we kind of stole for this red Rideamatic is this electric start spring that holds the generator back. That came off of the green 61 Rideamatic here. So that will be returned to it. And we've done some measuring of that spring, and these are metric, but they are within a decimal of a millimeter correct to the imperial spring that is on here. So we're very happy to get these replacements. So both of the 1962 Rideamatics here can get a new spring to hold the starter generators back. Now, kind of thirdly, for parts that we can put on, is this, which is the fuel tank cap that just came off, or just recently came off of our gold 1962, because the seal broke on it, and instead of replacing the seal when we were about to do a job, we put a brand new cap on there, which we weren't going to put on for a little while, but it's on there now. So we're just trying to not scratch it at all because it's nice and shiny. But that means that this is the perfect candidate to put on the fuel tank on this tractor now, because it didn't have a fuel tank cap, and we'll do a bit more on the fuel tank in a bit. But what we'll do now is do these kind of switcheroos of parts, and then we can come back here and explain what we're doing with the fuel tank on this one. The switch arounds are complete now, meaning this tractor now has a spring on the starter generator there, holding it back and tensioning the belt, and it's got its original belt guard around here now, so that's good. The next thing we're going to do is take the fuel tank off so that we can clean it out, clean out the sediment bowl and everything, get rid of any dirt in there. That's the first reason for taking it off. And the second reason, or an advantage of having it off, is that we can then get to the dashboard to get to some of the wiring and have a look at the electronics for this tractor, seeing as there are bits that are going to need to be rewired. Now, we couldn't actually take the tank off on the red 1962 because all of the bolts were pretty much seized and there was nothing we could do to them to unseize them, really. But we've been soaking these in releasing agent for a while, and we've cleaned them up, so they shouldn't be too difficult. That one's happy to move. There we are. I'm happy these are actually going relatively easily. They're not too bad. And if I can get all of these to come undone, then that is very good, because we will most likely have to use one or two of these for the mounting points for our battery ignition coil. That was probably the tightest one, but they're all loose now, so that's good. Nothing snapped. So I will just keep taking these off and come back to you in a second with the tank loose or off. We have all of the bolts out now, and it's time to kind of try and pull this through. There we are, that's tank out, and that's ready to clean up. Bit rusty back here, but at least we've got good access to the dash now. With the fuel tank off, it's given us a chance to kind of check a few things out. Firstly, the threads on the nuts and the kind of stud bits of these brackets aren't great, so we need to run a tap through the nuts, die along the threads before we reassemble that, just to make sure that that is all nice and clean and it goes on smoothly. There is a bit of muck in the tank that we can see there. You may not be able to see it down there. That's kind of what we'll be cleaning out now. It does appear that the tank has had a couple of repairs in the past. Hopefully they were successful and we don't have to make any more. Not too much sediment in there, but I think most of it ended up on the table here anyway. And we took the sediment bowl off. The tap is seized, so that needs some releasing agent on there and working it a bit. The sediment bowl is full of, well, sediment, and it is all rust from the tank, so that needs cleaning out, make it a bit less dusty in there, and just clean all of these bits up, which we'll be doing in the background while we move on to some of the electrics. With the fuel tank aside, we can start to look at some of the wiring, things that are jumping out at us. This cable, which should come from the positive on the battery, has been cut off, so either we need to install a Wi-Fi connection between there and the battery that we put in, or we need to put a new one of these cables on, whichever's easiest. And then this cable here is pretty much toast too, so that needs replacing. That goes up to the switch, which is also toast, so that needs replacing with one that will work with a battery ignition system, because like what has been done to our other 62 in this project, we are putting on a battery ignition system, which means we also need to locate this coil somewhere. Now, if we take inspiration from the other one here, a previous owner has mounted it under the fuel tank bracket here, and that's kind of nice and out of the way. You can't really tell it's there when you're looking at it from standing eye height. Only disadvantages are how close you are to the HT lead when you're turning the fuel on, and the fact that the HT lead's got to be pretty long to go up to the spark plug there. So kind of taking the advantages and disadvantages of that, we've got a few options. Either we mount this in the same place again and just kind of put up with the disadvantages. We could make up a bracket and try and mount it here somewhere. That's quite difficult and would require quite a bit of fabrication. We could, if we slid this bracket along, kind of mount it here with the bracket on the hole there, which is used for the hood stay. That's another option, but obviously the second you lift the hood up, then it's right in sight, so it's not very hidden. Or what I think is our preferred option is we mount it under the battery, oh, not the battery tray, sorry, the fuel tank kind of bracket here, using one of the bolt points from the fuel tank stays, and that goes there. Very short HT lead up to here, so that's good. The only disadvantage really is how close the wires will be to the belts, but as long as we make sure that we strap those kind of up using cable ties or something similar, then there shouldn't really be too many issues with that. So that's kind of our plan to start with. I think the first job will be making up a new battery cable, and there's not much to show on video for that really. We just kind of get the cable, put 2 terminals on it and put it on. So we'll be back in just a minute. It's the next day now, as you might be able to tell, but we've done a couple of things off camera. We put on the new battery positive lead here, and it's still on the reel because we don't know how long it needs to be yet with that battery in there. Now, originally we wanted to use this kind of red, more flexible cable because we just prefer it. However, when we tried putting that on, it dangled down too much underneath the chassis here, which will be a problem in future when we attach a lift bar and the spring that goes on it under here, because that would just pinch the wire if it's dangling down too much, and we don't want that. So let's go with this stiffer stuff. We've also put a new cable on from the top of the push button over here to our switch, which unfortunately we're having to use a pull-out switch instead of an ignition key, because we are struggling to find a battery ignition key with only 2 positions, off and on, with 2 terminals on it. But whenever we can find one of those, we will switch it onto here, and we'll put a new one on the other 62 Rideamatic that we've done this battery ignition conversion to. Now we've also put a new wire on the other side of our pull switch, which will be the positive to the coil here. And you may remember from when we first put the engine in, we did say we've already done the wiring for the points. So this will be the negative to the coil when the points close, and it connects to the chassis earth, which will originally come from the battery cable going to the chassis. That will then create a complete circuit across the coil. That will convert the 12 volts from the battery into high voltage, goes through the HT lead, and that will go into the spark plug, create spark, and away we go. But what we're going to do now is turn the tractor around on the bench, take the seat off, and see what we're going to do for a battery. With the seat off, we then put 2 new terminals on the earth cable here, so that should do a turn. And we did actually pull these 2 bits of aluminium off. They were kind of mounted in the battery tray here. I assume they were used to hold on a number plate or something on the back previously, but no way of knowing now, unfortunately. We've also cut down the length of the positive cable coming from the battery. Just needs the heat shrink shrunk, so I'll do that now. And we have got a battery for this already. It's on charge at the moment, but we don't want to connect that up just yet, because we'd like to connect up the rest of the electrical components first, so there's no chance of anything going wrong there. That is probably all good now. So what we will do is turn this bench around again and look at fitting the remaining electricals. Now we want to mount the coil, but as we said earlier, we're going to be using one of the fuel tank straps to do that, so the tank has to go on first. And we have cleaned this up. We were a bit more gentle than we would usually be because of those previous fixes. Making sure that we don't break them or anything again, but we've also put a new seal on the cap, so that's good, and cleaned out the sediment bowl, freed off the tap on here, and put a new gasket on the glass part, so that's all good. As well, we've put a die along, or run a die along the threads on the fuel tank straps and oiled them so they are as clean as possible. And we've got new nuts, washers and spring washers to put on there as well. So just trying to make it absolutely sure that they won't seize anytime soon, because as we know from the red 62 Rideamatic, that is quite a pain if they do. Now what I need to do is get this lined up with the holes on here. However, I can't quite do that at the moment because the bracket here needs to be lined up. So I'm probably going to get a hand from my cameraman to help me with this. And then lining up the coil with one of the threads here. So we'll come back in a second, hopefully, with things looking a bit more assembled and lined up. A little while later now, and we have the fuel tank on. That was actually quite difficult. I'm not sure why, but I don't know whether it was just we couldn't really see for lining things up. It was mainly this bracket that was a pain, but it's on now, so that's all good. And I'm sure you've noticed the coil is on there too, and all of the wiring going up to it from the points, the positive from the switch, and we've put an HT lead on there as well, so that wiring should be complete now, I think. So that's good. Now, the remaining things that we need to do include sorting out the seized choke cable, which I think we've spoke about this already, about how we've left this to soak in releasing agent for ages and it hasn't done anything. So we took to one of the Bolens Facebook groups to ask people if it's possible to take this apart, because we weren't quite sure, but apparently you can drill out these rivets in here and then this just kind of comes apart in half. So we are planning to do that at some point so that we can put a new cable on here, assuming that the cable is the issue and not the lever itself, but with this part we could probably solve that too. So here on the bench we have some new throttle cables. They do have control levers on them, but we're going to ignore them for now and just nick the cables. So the next job to do probably is to take these apart very carefully, because we don't want to drill those rivets out and damage the plastic in the process. Switch over the cables and then kind of navigate them around the various pulleys and springs and stuff, making sure that they don't get in the way of anything else, and cut them to length and all that stuff. But that probably isn't a job for today. Other things remaining that we need to do on this, if we move to the back, obviously the seat needs to be mounted properly, but not before we put the battery in, and also put the battery stay on, which I forgot to show you earlier when we were talking about stuff we're doing at the back. This is just a replica of the simple one that we made for the Red 1962, and that's worked well, so thought we might as well copy that. So once that battery's finished charging, that can go in here with a bit of rubber down the side, and then put the battery brace on, seat back on. Then once we've got these throttle and choke cables connected, just needs the grille and the hood on. Probably want to check that we put engine oil in this. I can't remember fully, I'm pretty sure we did, but worth checking. Then after that, it is pretty much start it up time. So we are very close to testing this tractor, which is good, but that is probably not on today's schedule. So that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.